My name is Joe Annotti. I'm going to be the panel guide for the innovations in maritime decarbonization efforts. So I'm going to introduce our speakers as of right now, and then I'll have each one come up, do a little spiel, and then we'll open up the floor to the group. Obviously a nice intimate setting, so my whole goal here is discourse, questions, engagement. So as things come up, don't hesitate to pull the trigger and get conversations going. Let's see, what's my order? All right. So Chett Chiasson is the Executive Director of the Greater Lafourche Port Commission. To my immediate right, Beau Berthelot, Vice President of Business Development and Director of Government Affairs for Maritime Partners. He's in the middle. And Tony Odak, Chief Operating Officer with John W. Stone Oil Distributor, LLC. All right. Nobody threw tomatoes at you, Tony. All right. So we're good. So we're good. We dodged that particular bullet. All right, Chett, I'll bring you up first.
All right, as he said, my name is Chett Chiasson. I'm the Executive Director for the Greater Lafourche Port Commission, which is in charge of Port Fourchon and the South Lafourche Airport in Galiana, Louisiana. I'm going to focus just on the port today because that's what we're here for, maritime, not aviation. But my port is at the southern tip of Lafourche Parish, about 2.5 hours away from here. Immediately on the Gulf of Mexico. There you can see Port Fourchon. We have about 80 different tenants on 147 leases and about 200 other companies that utilize the port on any given day. We have great customers like John Stone, Edison Schwess Offshore that are part of our team. And just so you know, just a base of background, we are a landlord port. Okay, so we build out basic infrastructure. We're a public entity. We build out basic infrastructure just like any other government entity would do, and provide access and facilitate growth and economic development. But with that being said, we kind of dive deep into a lot of what our customers are doing, trying to understand what is going on in industry so that we can try to cater to that as a port authority and advocate as a local government entity for those things and those different opportunities. Okay. So for us, Port Fourchon, it's all about proximity. We're immediately on the Gulf of Mexico. Within a 40-mile area of the port, there's over 600 structures that take part in offshore energy services and production and exploration of current offshore oil and gas. And I'll talk a little bit about what's coming in the future when it comes to offshore wind and the like in a little bit. So our mindset is all about how industry and environment can and do work very well together. And Fourchon is really a great microcosm of that. Our philosophy is really holistic resiliency. Everything we do is about how can we do things to limit the impacts on the environment around us and the community around us, but at the same time have a robust environment economy to support the people and the different community organizations and government organizations and the like in the area. So, for us, again, it's all about resiliency. We have to say this, that we had Hurricane Ida that it says Category 4 on this slide because that's what the National Weather Service tells you and tells us. But it was a Cat 5 storm all day, every day, and I never want to see one again. But we were back up and running. Tony can attest to this. Actually, before 9 days, but pretty much fully operational to an extent. 9 days post Category 4, Category 5 Hurricane Ida. And I think that's a testament to a lot of hard work and resiliency over the years in Port Fourchon. For us, all of the development that we do is in open water or broken up marsh. And as we do that, mitigation is important. So we've built over 1,200 acres of marsh to the north of the port. We've done things that go above and beyond mitigation as well. Because we have the material that we're dredging, and our material is really good virgin material that creates marsh and grows grass very easily. As part of a new development and dredging of Port Fourchon and plans that we have, we created what we call the Partnership for Our Working Coast. And it's a partnership between the Port Commission, the Water Institute of the Gulf of Mexico, the Water Institute of the Gulf, Shell, Chevron, Danos, and the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. And really what this group did was came together to put the science behind the best place to put the material that we were going to dredge in our deepening program, to provide the best benefits to our community, to infrastructure, to our habitat, and quantify carbon capture and sequestration that can be done with the marsh the new marsh we're going to create. Port Fourchon is a Green Marine certified port. We became certified last July, and we're very proud of that fact. We knew that the things that we were doing in the port would certify us, and it absolutely did. So we're continuing to work through that program. We are absolutely keeping a keen eye on emissions and what's coming around in the port. We have emission monitoring taking place as we speak. No one asked us to do it. We just said we need to be doing this. We work with a company called Sail Plan. They're our monitoring group, and we have 10 nodes out and about the port, and we are working with a group that is going to provide EV chargers in both our local community near our headquarters, as well as in Port Fourchon, and moving those things along. We understand that the political pendulum swings periodically, but it's not swinging to the place that we're going to forget about all of this after this administration is gone. We understand that everything that's going on in terms of environmental sustainability and all of those things are here to stay, and we want to play a key role in providing that, at least for the Port Fourchon area, with our customers and providing that ability. The other thing that we're doing is we're looking at what, in terms of the amount of electricity we're going to need in the port and the amount of charging capability, so to speak, we're going to need, and plug and play capability when it comes to shore power and those things. So as a vessel may use, a lot of diesel to move in and out of Port Fourchon, once they hit the dock, they need to be able to plug and reduce that emissions. That helps everybody. That helps just from a health standpoint, but it also helps from an emission standpoint for all of the projects and the things going on in an industrial area. So we're very focused on that now. That's something that our industry is heavily looking at and reviewing. The problem is that when you look at electrification of ports, obviously there's a lot of funding out there for electrification of ports. But when you look at the cost of this equipment, like a forklift, for instance, an electric forklift costs $750,000 a piece for the ones that they need to use in Port Fourchon. But a propane run forklift costs about $250,000, right? So there's not enough grants out there that you can get that's going to be able, that even benefits you to meet that demand. So that's part of the problem that we're going to have to find a solution to in the near future in terms of working and electrifying ports as we move forward. Again, I talked about Sail Plan and our emissions monitoring capability that we have in the port. It's interesting. We knew that our emissions were not bad emissions in Port Fourchon. Not everybody would have thought that, but I can tell you, based on the information that we have thus far, we're pretty much always in the good category when it comes to emissions. So, but the best part about that is, even though our emissions are good, as we move forward, we can even make those better, and that's just good all around. In terms of renewable energy, offshore wind, I keep talking about, on every presentation I give, we talk about, there's a term energy transition. Well, I can't stand that term, because I don't think we're in an energy transition. I think we're in an energy addition. And some other people have started to use that, and I love it, because, the technology may come at some point, but we hadn't figured out the technology to build a wind turbine or a solar panel without petroleum products. So my mindset is being real about that. But everything that we can possibly do to reduce our emissions, to create renewable energy, is what we need to be doing to provide the energy needs for our country and around the world. We are going to be a player in the offshore wind space. Port Fourchon has an agreement with Crowley Wind to build a facility in the port to be the first purpose-built offshore wind service facility for the Gulf of Mexico. That's a right of first refusal we have with them. It should turn into a lease later this year once they get a contract with an operator. We anticipate seeing offshore wind turbines built in Louisiana state waters prior to any built in federal waters, with a sale that should be happening later this year. So that's why, the development of that facility in Port Fourchon is critical. As we move forward and we look towards the deepening, we anticipate further ability to have manufacturing facilities in Port Fourchon. Go figure, we'd actually build stuff in the port rather than just bringing it in and out. But as the offshore wind capability moves forward, the other thing that's part of offshore wind, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, is hydrogen. And hydrogen is out there. We've talked to people about potential for ammonia. So have been in discussions on a lot of different opportunities, and we'll see where that takes us. This is the part where I say you have to see it for yourself. So if anybody is ever interested in coming ride down to Port Fourchon, especially on Friday, we love having Fourchon Friday. Come visit. We love taking you on a tour because we have a term or a statement in the port industry where if you've seen one port, you've seen one port. None of them are the same, and Fourchon is one that you have to see to believe, quite honestly. And that's all I have. I'm happy to take questions later. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Chett. All right, did this one right. All right, Beau, you're up next, my friend.
Hi, everyone. I'm Beau Berthelot. I work for Maritime Partners. Maritime Partners is a vessel leasing company. We own but do not operate about 1,900 tugboats and barges. So if anybody got a chance to see the river at some point today and you saw all the barges going up and down the river with the tugboats, there's a good chance that one of those is ours. But it's a good chance that somebody unlike Marquette's actually operating it. So we just lease the equipment out. But I'm here because there's two reasons why I'm here. Perfect. Little disclosure. So y'all don't hold me to this. So the reason why I'm here is twofold. One, in a prior life, I worked for a company called Conrad Shipyards, and Conrad had the privilege of building the first liquefied natural gas bunker barge ever in North America, and I spent vast majority of my time how trying to determine and understand the application of alternative fuels in the U.S. Jones Act industry, which started with natural gas, quickly moved to other forms, methanol, hydrogen, ammonia, and then also hybrid technologies, so battery storage, spinning reserves, trying to understand from a shipyard perspective, can I get it, and can I put it in a vessel? So that's why I'm on the panel today, not because we own 1,900 tugboats and barges. Part of the mission for the company and our co-founders was to be able to provide a solution to our customers, and that included a path to energy transition or energy addition, I guess I should say now. So Maritime Partners decided to invest in a company create a company called E1 Marine. E1 Marine holds the exclusive global license for the marine application of Element 1's methanol to hydrogen reformer technology. The reason for this is that Maritime Partners, through its infinite wisdom, went out, surveyed the market, identified all the different types of marine technologies, propulsion technologies that were currently available, what they thought was viable, and they realized that hydrogen is the cleanest of the sources. Arguably, if you want to challenge EV, we can have a conversation about that afterwards. The challenge with hydrogen is I can't carry enough of it in an amount, in a space to justify the construction of the vessel. If you want me to carry the amount of hydrogen to meet the mission profile, all of a sudden the vessel becomes too large. I cannot complete the mission. But with the reformer technology, if I store the hydrogen in the form of methanol and water, I can carry anywhere from 9 to 21 times as much hydrogen in the same volumetric space. So this is what this translates into. So if I have an ISO container, right, 20-foot ISO container, I can put, what the number is, 400 kilograms of hydrogen at 300 bar. If I run it through the fuel cell, I can get 16 hours runtime. If I use the reformer technology and I fill that space with methanol, I can get 4 days of runtime at 370 kilowatts, 75 kilowatts. If I use the reformer technology and the system we're going to use on the Hydrogen 1, which is the boat we're building based on this technology, where I recapture the water vapor off of the fuel cells and recycle it back through the system, I can run for over 6 days. And this is where I'm able to, you have to come and see it. We're putting money where our mouth is in terms of technology. We're actually building a tugboat that's going to run on this technology. Here's a cutaway of the technology, of the vessel itself. As you can see in the center of the circle, those are hydrogen buffer tanks. So the methanol, and I'm going to get to another slide here in a second, but the methanol gets mixed with the ionized water. It goes into the reformers. Out of the reformer comes 99.99% pure hydrogen and CO2. The hydrogen is pushed into the buffer tanks. The buffer tanks then feed the fuel cells. The fuel cells create power. Power is either stored in energy storage or sent directly to the drives, to the electric motors to propel the vessel. This is a better cutaway. You can kind of see the system. The two little black buttons that are sitting below the hydrogen fuel cells, those are the water vapor collection, condensation, and recirculation that goes back into the tank in the front. And then the question becomes, why are we doing this? Because this is, trust me, this is a lot of brain damage. This is why. So my boat, the Hydrogen 1, is going to produce approximately 1,400 horsepower if I run all of the reformers and all the fuel cells. I have enough battery to be able to punch up to 2,000 horsepower for about 30 minutes. I'm trying to compete, or I'm trying to provide an alternate to a Tier 3 or Tier 4 inland push boat. But this is why we're doing this. 0 NOx, 0 particulate matter, 0 hydrocarbons, in a fraction of the CO. And I'm running gray methanol. I'm running methanol that I can go pick up from Methanex right now at $1.76 a gallon. I'm not waiting on ammonia technology. I'm not waiting on electrolysis of water and transportation of green hydrogen. I can achieve substantial reductions in regulated marine emissions today with this technology. And then we're also taking the same technology, and this is what is probably applicable to this conference, is that we are, or E1 Marine is, going to take the same technology and containerize it so that I can drop off a 40-foot container. This one's a demo unit, it's going to be 20 feet, with fuel cells and reformers in it, and then you can produce power, but it's not diesel-generated power. It's running methanol, but it's not an internal combustion engine. It's through a fuel cell, so I don't have the same emissions profile as an internal combustion engine. Where we are showing the reductions in the emissions is from the tank to the wake. And we have a system that's better now, and then when the fuel becomes available, we can drop it in later. And this is the whole reason for this, right? As you can see, these are my emissions from a Tier 3 towboat. These are my emissions from the Hydrogen 1. I have a 99% reduction in all of the EPA Tier 3 emission categories. And then I have a 25% reduction in greenhouse gases, which, by the way, that is almost exclusively CO2. I don't have any N2O coming out of the system at all. And then, as you can see at the bottom, if I can get 2.5 gallons out of every 10 gallons of green methanol, I can meet IMO 2030 targets, which for most of the people in the audience, y'all probably don't know what IMO is. It's the International Maritime Organization. The target is to reduce your greenhouse gas emissions by 40% from 2008 emission numbers by 2030.
And then if I get 4 gallons out of every 10 that's green, I can meet the 2050, which is a 50% reduction. So again, just as a full disclaimer, Maritime Partners, we are fuel type agnostic. We have 75 tugboats that all run on diesel, and we love them very much. And I had somebody call me yesterday and ask me if we could build a boat that runs on ammonia, and I said, absolutely. But we think that for the ability to show emission reductions today, this is the clearest path. As far as the boat's concerned, we're cutting steel on the vessel in June. It will be built at Intracoastal Iron Works, which is in Berg, Louisiana, which is south of Houma. For those of that, for a lot of people, maybe that's an hour southwest of New Orleans, give or take. The vessel is on target to be in the water by the end of this year, and it'll go into commercial operation in 2024. And the operator, as of right now, will be ACBL, American Commercial Barge Lines. The intent of the vessel is to travel, given the size and the range, it's probably going to start in Houston and move either a 6-pack of hopper barges or a 2-unit, which is a 30,000 barrel tank barge, 2 30,000 barrel tank barges, from Houston to somewhere in the lower Mississippi River, probably between Baton Rouge and New Orleans. We do have plans to build more of these. I'm working on that right now. And I'm going to try to increase the size of the vessel as well. One of the things we're seeing is that the fuel cell technology is getting better. That's my limitation right now. I can scale up the reformers to produce more hydrogen. That's not a problem. But it's finding the fuel cells I can get enough power without having 25 fuel cells. That starts to be cumbersome. So, but anyway, that's me. That's our project, and we obviously, this is our contribution to the decarbonization efforts in the marine space.
Yeah. Thank you, Beau. All right, Tony, let's find your slides here, my friend.
So good afternoon, everyone. You're probably wondering, John W. Stonewall, what the hell is he doing up there? Oil in this green field. Well, look, it's his heritage, John W. Stone Oil Distributor. That's what we are. But what we really are is fuel agnostic, much like Beau and much even like Chett as a port owner. We are fuel agnostic. We're a milkman. So I'm looking out there, and we've got quite a range of age group. Who knows what a milkman is? Right? Everybody know what a milkman is? And that's what we are. You don't know what a milkman is? Well, we're a milkman. So if you want chocolate milk, we'll bring you chocolate milk. If you want whole milk, we got whole milk. Some of you that are very progressive, we'll bring you almond milk too. Whatever we can make money at is what we're going to be bringing to the end customer. So to that end, we are fuel agnostic, and again, we are an energy distributor. Some point down the road, we are going to be transitioning the name, but the name's not important. It's what we do is what's important. What we've done over the course of the last 5 or 8 years. Right now, we don't believe that ESG is just a fancy term to be used. We implemented an ESG program about 8 years ago, and it was very light. And that's kind of what our involvement with Clean Cities, Louisiana Clean Fuels was. We started to look at what could we do, and we'll get into this in some of the questions we have later, but what could we do to improve our environmental footprint? And really, it's the ESG, the social footprint, and the governance end as well. What we started doing back in those days, we had old Tier 0, before they even tiered them, the emissions engines. So we all had old, reliable Sherman tank diesel engines. So 671s and 149s, if any of y'all know what those are. As long as it had compression and it had oil somewhere in the vicinity of the engine, it would move. So very, very environmentally friendly. But what did we do? We analyzed and said, well, it's time to repower. We had some old equipment we needed to repower. When we really started looking at the repowers, we looked at a particular engine. We went to Tier 3 engines. And as it turns out, these Tier 3 engines were better in emissions, but quite frankly, it was lower fuel consumption at a higher horsepower. So we were able to actually take those old engines out, remove a lot of the emissions to the point, over the years we've had 17, 22,000, 28,000 tons of greenhouse gas reduction certificates that from third parties that have come in and evaluated it. But that was the whole progression. So even though we are an energy distributor, we like to say that we're a consumer. You know, we've got a couple of customers in the audience. We've got a couple of customers here on stage. But we say that from the standpoint of we stand behind our product. You know, we not only will sell it, but when practical, and it reduces the carbon emissions or reduces greenhouse gases, and not mutually exclusive, when it's fiscally sound, and that's what it became. It was fiscally sound to do it. We'll do it, and that's what we ended up doing with those engines. We ended up putting in shore power. So all these avenues to do that. The next driver was, and Beau touched on it, was what the international IMO, the International Maritime Organization, is driving. So there is clear mandate by the EU and the IMO, and we are a signatory state. So state being the country, the United States of America, we are a signatory flag state to IMO that we would reduce emissions. It's not a target market for the inland vessel market, but everything moves along. Just like California doesn't control the rest of the 50 states, the 49 states, but they are a bellwether. You know, where California goes, other progressive states go, and other less progressive states go. But this is where the IMO is. There is a push to get there. And how do we get there? So again, being fuel agnostic, there are lots of ways to get there. We don't have a whole lot of slides, but there's not only fuel that you can get there. And look, this is a very progressive company, you know, and a very progressive port. I've dealt with ports throughout the Gulf of Mexico. So we have locations, we have 19 locations throughout the Gulf of Mexico. The port of Fushun is one of the most progressive, and I mean that in every positive sense of the word, that they're forward-looking, they're easy to deal with. But it's not only fuel, it's what can you do? What can you do with your vessels? It could be engine design. It could be emissions abatement technology. It could be ship design, whatever it may be. And in our case, we like the fact that it's fuel related. So again, I'm going to circle back by telling you what else have we done. We've looked at going forward with some fuels. So over the course of the last year, we've been running biodiesel. We have a fleet of over 40 trucks on the highway that run through the Gulf Coast. We've been using biodiesel, summertime mix of 20 to 25%, and wintertime mix of 5 to 7%. We've also tested that biodiesel in our marine equipment in Texas. And why Texas? Again, we not only want to be environmentally sound, but we want to be fiscally sound. There were financial incentives for us to burn that diesel in Texas. Not so much, even though we produce it here, as odd as it sounds, we're one of the biggest producers of renewable fuels here in the state of Louisiana. The incentives were in other states to move it. We've since transitioned, or as Chett would say, and I'm going to credit Chett, I thought it was somebody else, but Chett is much more important than the person I was going to credit for this, but it is absolutely addition. So what we've added to our mix is right now, what's an easy drop-in fuel is renewable diesel. So how many of y'all know what renewable diesel is out there? For those that don't, in real basic terms, it's a fully cracked diesel. Rather than crude oil being your feedstock, it's a renewable fuel being your feedstock. It could be, in a particular supplier that we are talking to, it could be everything from soybean oil to used motor oil to, as crazy as this sounds, I mean, it absolutely shocked me, we are one of the largest producers of alligator meat, and hence alligator fat. So we have a rendering plant, I didn't know this, down the bayou that makes a rateable amount of alligator fat or alligator oil, however you want to look at it, as a feedstock for renewable fuels. So it is a direct drop-in. And where are we at with it? We had a supplier, it was a non-rateable supplier. And Brian, one of our customers and one of our ex-competitors, knows that rateability is really where you're at. You know, you don't, in the fuel business, regardless of what your fuel is, you don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. And rateability was a real challenge. Coming online in renewable side is we've got one plant coming on in May. We've got another one that we hope will be online in August, September. We have other plants that will be coming in the state of Louisiana coming online in 2024. So there'll be plenty of immediately drop-in available renewable diesel. So we've transitioned to that. What else has Stone done? Again, I've told you about biodiesel. We've repowered. We've gone to shore power. So in Fouchon, we've got several shore bases that we've gone shore power. In conjunction with another partner down there, Edison Schwess, we've installed shore power stations at the seaport docks, and we've installed them at the Stone docks. We've installed them on the inland river system. That's good for some point. You know, there are other avenues that we've also pursued. Those other avenues are from a social governance standpoint. So we've been environmentally sound environmental. So what have we done? We've gone to hospital mufflers. So we operate in a lot of locales that are around neighborhoods. We're in Gretna, Louisiana. You know, we've got a saying, people vote, companies don't. So being a good neighbor and being environmentally sound, we've gone to hospital mufflers, trying to quiet everything down. We're now looking at new technology which would be, rather than barges pumping off our fuel with diesel-driven motors through mufflers, and even if that diesel is environmentally sound with renewable diesel, which it probably will be here very shortly, we'll also have a direct drive, electric drive. So tremendous electric drive, but most of the time we're pumping to ourselves from our own equipment at our terminals. So it makes it very easy. We can have a plug-in electric drive motor, relatively quiet in terms of comparing that to a diesel motor. And again, it's all these aspects that we look at from an ESG standpoint. So I'll wrap that up, but again, I want to stress to y'all, there is a very easy way to go environmentally sound, and it doesn't have to be mutually exclusive from being fiscally sound as well. And we're happy to answer any questions later today. Thank you.
So I've got some questions for the firing squad portion of our panel here. I certainly encourage you guys to engage here as well. Chett, you brought up IDA. As we look at kind of the drivers for alternative fuel use, clean energy efficiency, one of the more Louisiana-centric issues of trying to adopt those practices is how we deal with inclement weather, particularly in late summer and early fall. How does that affect your planning when you have to look at resiliency methods as it relates to clean energy?
So, is this on?
Yeah.
Yeah. Testing. Yeah. All right. So obviously, the quickest way to get from our standpoint to get to zero emissions is to electrify everything, right? Well, electricity and water don't mix very well, so there's a lot of careful consideration that has to be made there. You know, over the years, through the different construction rules and things that we've done, we've had to prepare for elevation. Is the salvation for everything that we're trying to do when you live immediately on the coast. So we're still reviewing that, and what does all of that mean from that standpoint? You know, you talk about shore power, you talk about all of those things. You have to prepare that equipment to be able to withstand rising waters whenever a storm comes in. I mean, Hurricane Ida brought in a 10-foot storm surge. So pretty much all of the port had anywhere from, you know, a foot of water to 3 or 4 feet of water over it. That can be a problem. So we're having to review that. To tell you I have an answer for it, I don't.
Sure.
But those are the absolute things that we have to think about as we move forward.
Absolutely. Appreciate that. All right, Beau. You know, the industry jargon largely goes back to this chicken and egg thing. Do you put the infrastructure first and then the fleets come, or do you develop the technology, put it out there, and hope the network comes out after? From the E1 perspective, MP, MPS, where do you guys see it? What's the driver in your minds for that market?
I think from the Maritime Partners perspective, and this is represented in the technology we have chosen to invest in, is that to wait for the fuels of the future takes on a really big challenge in terms of adoption of the fuel itself. If I wait until I have a readily available source of green ammonia
before I then decide to build a vessel that runs on green ammonia. Shipyard production, for a lot of people in the room, I mean, especially a vessel like that, you're looking at 24 months minimum, probably 36, and that's assuming you get through the regulatory review process. So now you're already 3 years behind whenever the fuel becomes available. And the challenge, especially in the marine industry, is, and I'll try to give you guys an example of scale. The folks that had the Kenilworth truck that's down on the showroom floor, I believe I think it had like 400 kW of battery on it. That'll get you 100 miles or 150 miles before it needs to charge. It takes 6 hours to charge on a fast charger. The boat we're building has 1.1 megawatts of battery. That'll get us 30 minutes of runtime. So this to give you a perspective, there's another company, Crowley Maritime's building a tug right now. It's a ship assist tug, so it operates in the harbor and helps maneuver big ships to come in and out of port. That boat's going to have, I think it's like 6 megawatts of battery. That is a tremendous amount of power. That is a small boat, right? Relative to the ships that want to come in and plug into the port. So in terms of your question, we're trying to identify technology that we think can be readily adopted today. And in terms of our own technology, the methanol is available in over 100 ports globally. Like, it's on the ground. We have barges in our fleet that actually carry methanol. And then the rest of the technology can be implemented today. And then as the renewable versions of the fuel become available, then you can drop them in. And then you have the ability to determine from an economic standpoint, right, how much of this more expensive green fuel do I want to put in to reduce my emissions? There are solutions where if it's not 100% green, you don't hit emissions profile, and therefore everybody's waiting to use it.
Appreciate that. All right, Tony. You brought up in the comments about the renewables in Texas, not only was it an environmentally sound decision, but it was financially sound. So you're touching on the three-legged stool and, environmental and social and governance kind of thing. How do those levers vary? How do they get integrated into your decision-making process? With your heritage, rightly brought up, I appreciate that. But as you look to the future, how do you manage those three influences?
So I'm going to answer that, but I want to unwrap and give you a little color on Chett's question and on Beau's, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
So to speak to some redundancy that Chett had, what has Stone done? And it's not just Stone, it's most fuel distributors have done. So we look at it two ways for redundancy, particularly in weather challenged areas. And it's just not Louisiana, it's just not the Port of Fourchon, it's the Gulf Coast. I mean, and every coast has got its issues, if you're at inland, there used to be a supplier here that operated out of Nashville. Tornadoes. So everybody's got a challenge. What do you do to offset those challenges? So the two challenges we see in going greener or going more environmentally sound are geographic challenges and supply challenges. So how do you do that? Diversify in geography. So we've looked to do that. So it was an unfortunate hit that Fourchon took when Ida came through, and Fourchon had done just amazingly. I don't know that y'all are really grasp the magnitude of how powerful that storm was and how powerful of a hit it impacted Fourchon. In conjunction with Chett and several other state and federal officials, that port was able to move, get up and moving 9-10 days. Arguably, I think one of our vessels recorded over 150 mile an hour winds. And I think several others did. The Weather Service didn't, but a Category 5 or damn near Category 5 that passed on top of, or as we would say down here, just to the windward side of the worst part of went over Fourchon. So geographically, we were able to establish our Cameron base, our Venice base. We started moving west. So geographically, we do that. And then from a supply standpoint, we go back to what Maritime Partners is doing. So touching on methanol. We supply methanol right now to the offshore oil industry. We've got it in shore bases. It's readily available right now by barging. We've got some of the greatest production facilities for these renewable fuels. They could be green, they could be gray, and they could be blue. Y'all hear all kinds of terminology, whether it comes to methanol, hydrogen, you name the fuel, but all these different colors, we've got the capability here. And it's unfortunate, but there are incentives that move it to other locations. You take those incentives out, and where is it? That base demand is here in our backyard. So what we've looked at is redundancy of supply, and that speak to, because of weather. Look, we may be hit with a hurricane that comes up the Mississippi River. That greatly impacts refineries in the Mississippi River. But we've got the redundancy capability of maybe going with our equipment, going east to Pascagoula, going west to Texas, or for that matter, we could go in the Caribbean and maybe source fuel out of the Caribbean. So that kind of, how do we, as an energy distributor, and I stress energy, could be any kind of energy distributor, we look at geographic redundancy as well as supply redundancy. And then to speak to what Beau said, I mean, it's a huge task. I mean, to some degree, Beau, I was involved with the LNG as well. We had pitched LNG several customers. It was a tough sell, and to this day, we have not sold one drop of LNG or natural gas, but we're still kind of keeping our toes in the water, ear to the ground, see where that thing goes. But there's a smart way to do this. These are huge investments. I'll give you some numbers. Where it costs us to build a bunker barge, a floating Walmart, super Walmart, on the water, where we deliver fuel, water, lubes, take off your garbage, take off your slops. That may cost something right now in the neighborhood of $3.5 to $4 million. That same LNG unit, arguably, somebody knows better than I do, but I'm going to say in the 85 plus, and that's just the dumb barge, 85 million, not 88.5, 85 plus $1 million barge market. So, but is there a way to do that without making that $85 million investment? Absolutely. So working with Methanex, working with Maritime Partners, with other suppliers, we're doing smart things. So what do? We make paper barges. So there's metal barges, steel barges, but you can make a paper barge. What's a paper barge? Well, you hire an engineering firm, pay them a few bucks, and a few bucks seems to be a lot more bucks than we initially thought. My CFO would tell you that I'm terrible at budgeting. I'm usually 20% too low on everything. But long story short, you could build a paper barge to make that last mile delivery. And it may be methanol. So the same folks, we've talked to Chett, we've talked to Maritime Partners, we've talked to some customers about ammonia, a very green fuel as well. So how do we get there? We've got some experience on LNG. Well, everybody's going to say, well, Tony, LNG is not ammonia. Well, or ammonia is not LNG. Well, I'm slow, but I'm not quite that slow. Yes, I do realize it, but there are very, very similar paths to get to that point. And to that point is there is a smart way to make the investment. You do step investments. So you may not build a prismatic LNG tank. You may not build the end-all be-all because technology changes. Maybe you build something small to build to scale so that when that full scale, much like Maritime Partners does, they're building a gray methanol or a gray hydrogen vessel, but when that blue or green hydrogen comes along, it's a direct drop-in. They're making the modifications, thinking about that going forward. And now, back to your question. What was that question?
ESG.
ESG. Well, I've kind of hit on everything ESG, but we try to really be good stewards of not only environment but socially everything around us. And it's quite a change. I mean, there's some folks here that know Mr. Stone. Mr. Stone is 81 years old, and if anybody's watched the TV show Mad Men, Mr. Johnny could fill in as any of those characters in Mad Men. But he does realize, and that there is a movement going forward. And again, we're it may or may not be a bad term, but we're capitalists. If we can make money at it, we're not a not-for-profit. We're out there to make money. And if we, as a milkman, can make money, and you want to burn, I mentioned it earlier to somebody, that if y'all want to burn olive oil in your engine, and we can make money at it, let me tell you we're going to figure out how we're going to bring you olive oil to burn in your engine. So,
Appreciate that. Not for nothing too, the S element of ESG social, there's a lot of jobs y'all guys keep going too, right? Coming back in 9 days, a lot of people's families thankful for the ability to turn the lights back on that quickly. So
it is, and there's huge impacts. I mean, if you've been around this ESG space, you hear about the impacts to challenged communities. I'm off on a terminology. Maybe y'all know what the terminology, but I say underprivileged communities. But going to these newer fuels and doing it in a systematic fashion can really benefit that social end of things.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate that, Tony.